It's my great pleasure to be talking on the Resident Podcast with Jason Miles today. Now, when you get an email with a Grammy Award-winning musician getting in touch who's worked with Miles Davis, Roberta Flack, Marcus Miller, and Chick Corea, basically you respond to the email saying, when can we speak? And Jason, that email came through to me, I think, just a couple of hours ago, and here we are talking. I am so glad and so excited that you could make some
Cool.
time for us.
Well, I mean, this is why we came to Portugal, to kind of just, move away from things. Look, I've been doing this 53 years in the music world, you know what I mean? And it just comes, and there comes a time when you say, how much do I want to keep on pushing forward? Yes, you need to still be creative, and I still believe in the music that I'm doing and everything, of course, and want to keep on doing music. But, I'm looking for an environment that just was kind of more relaxed for me.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and that makes a lot of sense to stay with the great vibes of the awesome musicians that you work with, and maybe do that in a more relaxed setting. And you are taking it on the road here, aren't you? It's not like you've retired from performing. You have a new show on the road, as it were, that revolves around a very special occasion this year. Miles Davis would
Yeah,
would have been 100 years of age this year,
next
and
month.
you're next month. Yeah, and this is miles on miles, I guess, isn't it?
Well,
Um,
that's kind of been a play, but I did an album in 2006 called Miles to Miles because of a drawing that he made that he autographed for me, Miles to Miles,
nice.
and then I just decided that that this year, because it was his 100th, that everything that he really did for me. I mean, when you get a chance to work with Miles, I mean that was my whole goal in almost life. My whole musical goal when I came back to New York in 1974 was I want to work with Miles Davis, and
And it
you
happened.
know, well, it happened, and it's never the reason why you think it happened. You
Okay, can you
know.
tell us a story? Can you tell us a story?
I mean, I come back here, and I'm a keyboard player, and I want to get into different than everybody. I came back to New York to a heavy jazz scene, but I was really enthralled with electronic keyboards and what was happening. Even though, of course, I listened to so many great piano players, and I played piano, but as I saw music, develop, I saw some of my real heroes, start moving over to playing electric keyboards and everything. And one day when I was in school in Indiana, and I walked by the music hall there, I heard a sound, a very interesting sound, and I walked in, and there was a guy on stage at the music hall, like about 800, 1,000 people can fit in there, and he had this little tiny keyboard on stage, and I walked there. There was nobody in the place, and he was standing there messing around with it. And I go, "Wow, what is that?" And he goes, "This is my instrument. This is my instrument that I made." And I go, "Really? What is it?" "Well, my name is Robert Moog, and this is my Moog synthesizer."
No.
And I was like, "Wow!" And everything. "Yeah, come here." I came on stage, and he started showing me and everything, and I was like, "Wow, this is like something else." And so he did a demo, that night. He put on a little vibe, and I said, I got to start. And then all of a sudden I started seeing people like Herbie Hancock,
Yes.
and, and even more so listening to Clockwork Orange soundtrack, and, switched on Bach and all of those kind of things, about seeing that these are sounds that are happening, and they really, came to me. And as I
Yeah.
started hearing more of the people that I loved, getting into electric keyboards, from the Fender Rhodes, even, I started going, This is where I want to be." And when I came back to New York, that's really not where the scene was. The scene was like, you had to be a great jazz player, man. You had to play this or else you weren't. And people were telling me all the time, "Man, you ain't going anywhere, man, with this stuff. It's not going to
Really?
happen," and I said, "Well, I don't believe it, because of all the things that are just happening around music, and all the new development and technology is moving." Well, anyway, I hung with the synthesizers, and I started, really, really becoming, really very, very proficient, both musically and being able to integrate it into music and everything. And just to cut to the chase, I never knew how you would play with Miles Davis, and
Mhm.
I started through. I can tell you a much longer story, but and it's in my book actually. I'll send you a digital copy of my book.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it tells the whole story, and it's won awards and everything. I mean, it's a really good book that brings you really inside of the whole thing. And what happened was basically, through a number of different circumstances, by Michael, who the saxophone player Michael Brecker, we
Yeah.
started hanging around a lot and everything, and he was just so into what I was doing, and he was telling so many people, "Man, why aren't you using Jason, man?" Well, people knew me, but to get into the scene, somebody's got to like go, you got to bring
Yeah.
this guy. And
Yes.
so I started getting more things happening until I rehooked up with Marcus Miller after we had known each other a few years. But Marcus started
Oh
to
my
not
word.
want to go on the road, and he wanted to start writing more music and being more of a producer. And I went along for that ride. And Marcus had played with Miles and for when he came back on his comeback, and then just after we had finished David Sanborn's album and another album, one day he just called me up one night and said, "Hey, Miles Davis, man, Miles is on Warner Brothers, man. I just got a call from Tommy LaPuma, and they're looking for songs, and I got some stuff, man. Do I want to try? You want to come over and do some demos?" And I go, "Yeah, let's go." So I went
Let
over
me
and we
think about
started.
that.
And we started doing some demos, and 2 days later he called me and told me, "Yeah, man, I got this gig," and we ended up making Tutu, and
Really? So you were
that's how I
involved
met.
with that album.
What?
You were involved with the Tutu album.
Well, I helped develop the Tutu album. I mean, that was, we built that together. I mean, it was Marcus's music and my ability to go and turn the music into sound, and the new way that things were being done using sampling and
Yeah.
see, Miles had to do something innovative, because,
Yeah.
or else what is he not Miles? I mean, he reinvented music and jazz 4 times, 5 times. And so what was this album going to be? They had tried something before this when he first moved over to Warner Brothers, and it wasn't working, and that
Yeah.
they stopped it. And then the producer, who was very, very clever and genius guy, Tommy LaPuma, said, "We got to try something different." And so what happened was that they called Marcus, because Miles had recommended, call Marcus and see what he's got. And so we started making this music because because we were cutting edge, we were making the cutting edge stuff happening, that I was getting influenced from by the UK a lot.
Okay. Right.
Like Trevor Horn and Art of
Overall, yeah.
Noise and
Yes.
ABC and all of that stuff. That's what I was listening to. As of course, I was always listening to jazz and listening to what was happening. But what I was doing with synthesizers was looking for the next thing. And so when all the next vibe was happening, I was there. And
Oh,
so when we did Miles, it was like, Marcus, had the songs. Now, what were we going to do with these songs? How were we going to turn them into something that was so just next step? And that's what we did, and that's what my step with. And then Miles loved what I was doing, and we became really good friends. And I did 3 albums with him.
now on your website, he says you're a genius. Most people regard him as a genius, and not many people get get to be called a genius by Miles Davis, right?
That's one of the great compliments, man. What am I going to say? But he told that to a lot of people. But it's like, don't believe your press. And I mean, just because somebody says that, you're always thinking that that you're not comfortable. You have to go to the next place because of what you're doing. I mean, every step we took on Tutu was another step into the future. And then after that, the next album was adjusting to it even differently about how do we go and make that into something now different. And we did that also with Siesta and Amandola. And they're there now. They're ingrained in the musical history of Miles Davis.
Absolutely, and if that's not an accolade enough, and it's a fair point you make, isn't it? It's the work that matters, and the output, apart from what people say. But that is quite the compliment.
Well,
Others
yeah.
others agree. It would appear, looking at some of the other people you've worked with, we've got Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, Aretha Franklin, Chaka Khan, Amazing the Crusaders, George Benson, Joe Sample, Herb Albert, and Vanessa Williams.
Well,
You've
Luther
worked.
Vandross, I worked with him for 10 years.
Oh my goodness. It is such a pleasure to be talking
Thank you.
to you today. And for people who might not be familiar with, people who aren't so much into the names behind the music and they just love dancing to the music, Never Too Much by Luther Vandross. The bass lick that starts that is the work of Marcus Miller, is it
Yeah.
not?
Well, that's when they first met. I didn't make it into that until like 3 years later, because I wasn't working with Marcus at that time. Marcus and I started working together in 1985.
Right.
But he had come to me and told me that Luther's ready to make a big step, and his step was that he could do R&B and sell out 5,000 seats anywhere. He
Yeah.
was he was a huge R&B star. But if you got to know Luther, that just wasn't good enough. He wanted like to be in the Michael Jackson stratosphere and stuff like that, and he wanted to be into pop, and
Yes.
and find his space in pop music. We're using what he was. He didn't want to just like do something. He wanted to do something that was also really fresh. And so Marcus, when we got done with Tutu, Marcus said to me, "Look, man, I want to introduce you to Luther because we're getting ready to do a new album, and I really think you can help." And
Wow.
I said, okay, let's go. So he told Luther, and that was good enough for him. And we went to Montserrat, to the British West Indies, and recorded at Air Studios the album "Give Me the Reason." And
Oh,
that was a huge Luther. I was in the airport lounge with him in St. Martin, and he said to me, "Look, like you said, I can sell out all of those places, man. Radio City Music Hall, I could do that, but I want Madison Square Garden, man. I want like Wembley. I want these places that are going to be, that just put me on that level, and I hope you can help me." And
us
so,
us
excuse
British
me.
soul boys love that. We love the sound you made with him. Give me the reason.
Yeah,
What an
well,
incredible.
yeah, give me the reason. Yeah, "Stop to Love" was the was when I knew that Luther was crossing over. When we were in the studio, and we were working, and it was not easy work. It's not that it's not easy. It's just that you feel that I got to pull this shit together, man. Because and you're not, you're not like, how can I say, nervous or anything like that. You're just in your own mind trying to figure out in the music what you really need to do here to bring that out, what they're trying to do, you know. And
Yeah.
so and so when we started on that tune, and I listened back to it, and we were here in the studio in Air Studios. I mean, it was like, and the beautiful Montserrat was amazing. Um, and we were in there, and I listened back to, and we started listening back to it, and I started seeing how everybody was like vibing on it. I just said, This is what's going to cross him over. This
Yeah.
song's going to cross him over," and it did. It made it his highest charting to that point on the pop charts. Okay.
How incredible. How incredible. And with Aretha Franklin, was it around the Who's Zoom In Who time that you worked with
No,
her
no, no,
possibly?
no. It was later. It was later than that. It was. I jumped on with Aretha because of Nat Adderley Jr., who was Luther's musical director. She wanted him to do some stuff, and Nat called me and said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Okay, well, let's see what happens." But I've been through a couple of things with Aretha that were deep. With Luther and Aretha, trying to do a duet with them was a Wow, that was a monumental task. So I
But
mean, go ahead.
clearly you're the go-to guy when A&R and the artists want to take things to a new and different level. Jason is on speed dial with the people.
Well,
If they don't know you, they're only the people they know.
well, you know what though, but you have to look at it like that was 17 years of my life. That was from like 1979 basically to 1995 into 96 when I started producing on my own. You can just stay in a certain place and you see the scene changing around you. And if you're not adaptable to see what you had to do, because everybody, when I was in there working all those years, I put a lot of things on the side that I wanted to do. I just said, there are moments in your life when you make a decision. Do you want to go in that direction or do you want to go in that direction? And the
Yeah,
direction over there was with Marcus and Luther and Tommy and different producers, of like me being part of their scene. And what was over here was like, well, I'm going to try to go and do my own production thing. And I just said that, it's gonna help me more if I just put everything to the side and really put myself into this. And it was the right decision to make. So when it came around 1996, I just was feeling that I don't know what I have left to give these people anymore.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I I, I, I mean, we were creating new vibes. Well, the last album I did with Shaka was like, man, we did some great stuff with that. I mean, some really great stuff on that record. And when I listen back to it and I listen to it, and I just was saying to myself, what can I give these people anymore? And at that point, the stuff I was doing with Marcus, well, we did about 40 albums together.
Heaven.
We did about 35 or 40 projects together, definitely. And at that point, he was looking at like, well, man, I got to play bass. I got to go back and I got to start playing bass, man. What am I going to do? We've worked with Luther, Sanborn, Miles, Shaka, Roberta Flack, all these people. Where's there to go from here? Just
Yes.
keep on going in the rotation. And with me, it was like, well, now I've done everything with everybody, and isn't it time for me to go and now set the pace of what the production should be and where I think it's going?
That
And I
makes
had to start
sense.
from scratch. I had to start from scratch, the bottom. I mean, first I came back to New York, I was at below the bottom,
Well, can
and
I
then
ask you about that? I would love
what?
to talk to you about your production career in your own right, but I've got too giddy and carried away talking about all these incredible musicians,
Sure,
and I haven't
go
I
ahead.
haven't asked you about where you began and this idea of coming back to New York. So, how did it all begin for you, and
Well,
what was the journey that meant you came back to New York?
well, I was in Brooklyn, New York. Born in New York, lived there through the 60s. It was an incredible time of
I
music,
bet.
and got so much incredible music. I saw so much unbelievable music. It was ridiculous. At a young age, I was able to really absorb. There was so much incredible music happening around New York. And I was playing piano. I was in a band that we played. I mean, the same thing. Hated school, but went to college because who wants to go to Vietnam, And and when I was in college, I met this wonderful, incredible woman, who just she just had the magic, and we started, living together. And then I was always collecting records, and there was a place near my house, Columbia Record Club. And she graduated a year ahead of me, and she started working at Columbia Records, just like doing like just bring some cash in, you know what I mean? And so, and then she was very smart and everything, but we were together and we were planning together, and they would have a sale every month of all the albums that came back to the record club, and so employees were able to go in there and buy albums for $1. And
Fantastic.
so and so I would go in there like once a month and buy like 20 albums, and all of these people, they would come in because I was in Indiana. So we had to all go to the country section. And then the other part of the people would go to the rock section, which I loved rock also. Don't think that I'm just like, I loved all the bands, The Who and all the Grateful. I mean, I loved all that stuff. Paul Butterfield, but I was into jazz, and the jazz section, nobody was at. So I would go back there with maybe one other guy, and there would be like Miles Davis albums and CTI albums and everything. I would just like
Yes.
plunk them out, and listen to it. And I'll tell you something. Two albums that had a great effect on me was Bitches Brew really had an incredible effect on me. Especially when I heard Chick Corea on Fender Rhodes, and that was just like, wow, man, this is something else, But when I heard Herbie Hancock's Headhunters with
Yes.
Chameleon and everything, and I was kind of like, what am I doing? What am I doing? That was the album that made me know, like, I'm going back to New York, man, and we're going to give this a try. And are you going to come with me? And Kathy, of course, decided that she's coming. We're going to try. We're going to go and do this. And I started at the bottom, but I was very lucky because my cousin was going out with one of the biggest musicians in New York. And so, even though, of course, nobody do it, I got to meet these guys like the first and second night there in New York at a very famous club called McKell's. And I got to go and I got to go and meet these guys who were my heroes because you used to be able to see credits on albums.
Yes.
So I said, oh my God, there's Randy Brecker, and there's like Will Lee and Steve Gadd and these guys that I'm just like, oh my God, and they were so close to you now where they weren't close to you in Indiana. And so you used to be able to go see everybody, McCoy Tyner, and jazz, contemporary jazz, Brazilian jazz. And I met some very cool people,
I
and
bet.
I started also getting back into study really heavy. I started studying bebop piano, and then I studied with a grand master. And as I was doing this, I was starting to develop my chops as a writer more, you know.
Oh,
and
amazing.
and and it's a serious journey, and we scuffled, man. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was like, you hear the story. Jason comes back to New York, and then he works with Miles Davis. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It just doesn't work like that, because so many other people. I always said this. Well, I saw Chick Corea, and Chick came back to New York in 1959. Well, he worked with Miles in like 1968. So what was happening for 9 years? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? But
I, I've heard that.
He was doing gigs and working with people and building up his name, you
That's
know?
the reality, isn't it? That's the reality. The hard work that people
Yeah,
don't really understand or factor in. And I've heard
right.
that, that musician expression. It took 20 years to have an overnight success.
Yeah.
That's what it's like, right?
It's paying dues. Severe.
Yeah.
And in New York, you pay dues. New
Yeah.
York is the toughest scene, man. But somebody came up to me and said to me, man, don't worry, because one day, man, people know your name in New York. They'll know your name all over the world.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
said, that's like deep, and they were right.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
they were
Well, there's a
right.
movie. There's a movie in this for sure. And you've written a book
Um,
about your life as well, have you?
I wrote a book called The Extraordinary Journey of Jason Miles, a musical biography, and it's on Amazon. It's done well. I mean, everybody bought it and helped me get it published. I sold a couple of hundred up front, and people get the book, and they're like, we're fascinated by the story, because I'm
Awesome.
bringing you into it. I'm not like on this, that, I'm bringing you into the true story of some of these albums that we made, like Tutu and A Mandala and Luther Vandross, Power of Love, and here, and all these different albums I made. My Grammy album, A Love Affair, the music of Yvonne Lins. How it took. Oh, it's a great album. Yeah, well, it took me 8 years to get a deal for it. You know, with these
Yes.
with these record companies. You're going with the record companies. The record, music business is not for the faint of heart.
No. But I have a very minor dabbling with it, and that is it. Yeah, it put me off for good. Just a minor dabbling. I don't know how you did it, Jason. And
Well,
here we
how
are.
does a lot of people? How do a lot of people do it? And look, I'm in New York back then, man, and the scene was like, it was deep, man. Really deep. I mean, like it straightened itself out after a while, and going into the second half of the '80s, the scene straightened itself out with less people on drugs, you
Right.
know, and more cats straightening it out, realizing, oh, okay, man, I got to get past this shit.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm really like, in here, and I'm gonna I have a family and all of this stuff, man. Figuring it out just because of how deep the whole scene was. From
yeah.
the studio scene to the live scene. The studios were going 24 hours a day back then, man.
And what an extraordinary world. We're not going to see anything like that again, I suspect. Music's changed a
Never.
lot.
No, no, no. It's a magic time. I mean, Marcus and I reunited at the North Sea Jazz Festival a couple of years ago.
Oh, lovely.
And we spent an hour on stage together talking about, the projects that we did together. And he said, it was a magic time. I was
Yeah.
lucky. I came at the dawn of the synthesizer age, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, mate.
And
What a time to be alive, and what a time to be a
yeah.
musician.
Well,
Yeah.
people come up to me, man, and always said to me, you and a couple of others got you guys are the godfathers, of this stuff.
Well, I
I'm
am
going, well,
delighted
I
to
don't
be
know,
talking to you about it today. So, and this cannot do justice to your incredible career, like a 30-minute conversation with you. People can
No.
hear more by coming to your shows. I'd love to talk to you again, but I want to find out more about what happened when you went into your producer time rather than being a session player and being brought in to help
Well,
other musicians. You
what
went into your
happened?
own
Well,
production
well, well,
era.
what happened was that people trust, people. The reason for doing those 17 years and everything, people learned about me and started trusting me. Of like, I was in the studio with the greatest producers. So you think I learned something? Well, I learned all their tricks. I learned all the way to do it. I learned how to run recording sessions, how to do all of this stuff, from the masters, man.
Yeah.
The true masters. And so my friend, basically, how I got into serious production was my friend had a company, and he was doing different kinds of things. First, it was a film company, then the film company broke up, and then it was just like audio, and it was getting into doing some children's music and everything, and wanted me to do an album of nursery rhymes done modern. And I did it with a big TV star, and it came out really great. And they gave me another project after that, that did really well also. And then I met Jane Fonda. I did one of her workout projects, and that came out. Yeah, but it was really fun, because it's like, here, give me, here's the money, Bring me back something that you can do, exercise, dance. Here's the layout. Here's what you do. Here's what you do. And to be able to be in New York and like call your friends, the best musicians in the world, say, hey man, you want to make some money, with me? I'll give you like, I'll give you like I'll give you $1,000. Come up to the house, blow a couple of solos. Kathy will make some grill out some fish, and we'll do this Jane Fonda shit. And everybody was
Yeah,
like,
whole
yeah,
time.
man, let's let's go, man. And that's what basically happened. And but with my friends on it, everybody had a great time. And we did this for Jane Fonda. That's her biggest selling one, called Lean Routine, it was called. But anyway, after that, he had a project that was huge for the UN 50th anniversary. And he turned it over to me, and it was very big budget. And I pulled it off with all these amazing artists and people there. And I got to kind of hang my hat on that to get to the next place after that. And then there was some down points, man. I got in the record company mess with jealousies and this and people that
Yeah,
sabotaging you and all of that shit. And it was very depressing for a minute there. But then you see who your real friends are and who were there to really help you. And I had a couple of them, that really just said, no, man, this get away from that, and I started rebuilding again in like 1990, about 1998 into 99. I started taking a new direction, and a friend of mine gave me an idea for a project of doing the musical weather report. And I did the musical weather report, and it was like a smash. It was like the number one in Japan, and I had all
beautiful.
these amazing people on it. And my friend Joe Zawinul, who was the leader of Weather Report, he was on it with Wayne. Wayne Shorter and him were digging it. And then I went from there. I did the music of Yvonne Lins, which got me a Grammy, and kept on building from there with all these different projects from there. And I started realizing that, I like producing artists, and I produced some really cool artists that really were great to work with. But then I started realizing that, it's really cool when I come up with the concept and I can go and sell my concept and pull that together. And I can create these different kind of albums. Like I did the music of Marvin Gaye, and that did really well. I made an album dedicated to two albums dedicated to Grover Washington Jr. after he died. That's my biggest selling album. That's my
Is it?
biggest selling one, To Grover with Love. And I kept on going after that. And then to tell you the truth, the music business fell apart. The whole thing just fell apart with streaming and
Yeah.
Spotify and all of that
What,
stuff.
what do you make of that, Jason? I mean, isn't it great that people have access to more music than they've ever been able to
I,
experience? There's a
it
joyous
is it
part of that,
it is
isn't it?
fantastic. Okay,
Yeah,
it is great. Now they should pay us.
I absolutely agree. Now, how is that going to happen? This must be gutting for people in your position
You can't make a
who
living. You
yeah,
can't make a living with recorded music the same way, because places like Spotify and Spotify, Apple Music, all these places, they don't pay a lot of
it's
money, and
outrageous.
there's too much product out there, because it's gotten very, very easy for anybody to say that they can make an album. You used to have to go into one of those temples, and the temple was the recording studio.
Yeah,
And it was a privilege to walk into some of these rooms. I've been in some of the greatest rooms in the world, the Power Station and Right Track and A&M Studios. And you walk in there and you go, what music was made in these places?
yes, yes, yeah,
And Air Studios and all these incredible places. Abbey Road, come on,
yeah,
and then what happens now? Oh, I got a laptop that comes with GarageBand, and I'm a producer. You know what I mean? I got beats, I got this. I don't want to learn how to play an instrument. Who needs to do that? I'll create this and I'll do, and that's kind of, where there are still people out there, like you're listening to Taylor Swift and people and some other people like that, and these people make good records. I mean, I don't care what anybody says about Taylor Swift. She is good. She really is. I mean, and she's got good people working with her. She's got Max Martin writing songs with her, man. I mean, there is always the good level out there, But excuse
yes,
me, my nose itches. But
great,
yeah, you're right. There's always the real level out there, But
yes,
to get to that elite level, it's not room for everybody. When I was doing my album Miles to Miles in 2006, I didn't realize how an album like Tutu has such a big effect on people. And
yes,
my friend in RCA Records came up to me and said to me, "So you're doing that? You're going to do your Miles record, right?" I'm going, "Yeah," which was an album of me writing all original songs, like I just did, dedicated to Miles and the different vibes that I picked up from him. And I got all these incredible musicians that I collaborated with and everything. But a guy in RCA tells me, you know what the favorite album of the Dave Matthews Band is? I go, no, what? Tutu. And I go,
Amazing.
really? And he goes, you should get a hold of them, man, and have them play on your record. And I said, and it's a really good, yeah, man, here's your manager, man. Call him. I'll call him. I'll call him. They're on RCA. I'll call him and I'll tell him you're going to get a hold of him. So I got hooked up, and Carter Beauford from Dave Matthews played drums on the record. And we've been friends. And now Carter and I, we've done live gigs, and I'm hoping to bring him over here next year to do like celebrating the musical weather report, with me next
Well,
year
I
here.
wonder if we can conclude on that. We do have to say a little bit about Kathy, who's been by your side on this journey as well.
Well,
You haven't
Kathy's, she's my rock, my everything. I mean, for real, we're together 56 years. I mean, it's not that easy. But we made the decision to come here to Portugal together. And I wanted to give her, as she, when the music business went down, and everybody's money went down, she stepped up and filled the very important void for us, and she went back to doing some teaching, and she excelled at that and was able to go to another level, and that kind of put us over the edge to get us here, including what I always said, that if you're making money in the music business, you don't need a fancy car, buy Apple stock, okay? But by the time you get to so and so, a certain age, you're going to look at it. Wow, I did really well with that. Yeah, well, your BMW depreciated to nothing. You know what I mean?
yes.
And that's what I did. I met people who knew about investment, and we started
Yes.
investing like 40 years ago. But one thing I wanted to say, yeah, also, with that, like I do have this new album coming out, May
Well, yeah,
1st.
we want to know about that. We need to know about that, Jason, and
Yeah.
also where people can hear you, because you do a show which is not just music, which would be more than enough, I'm sure, but you tell the stories of your life in the music
Yes,
industry as well.
I
So
do.
please tell
Yes.
us about the album, and please tell us about how people can come and enjoy an
Okay.
evening with you.
Well, okay, two things. One, the album is called 100 Miles for Miles Davis. I wrote these new songs for Miles. It started out as one song, okay? I said, I'm going to do one song for Miles's birthday, blah, 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 and then I played it for like two important people to me, that I know that I can trust them,
Mhm.
which is few and far between in the music business, And they both said to me, man, this is killing, man. You can't just do one song and just put this out. You got to give people more, man. Come on. So the men had to spend more money, and Kathy and I, we sat down, and she says, you got to go for it, which is the great thing about her. She's always been incredibly beyond supportive. I mean, she just knows that if I have my head on it, what I'm going to deliver, and she's incredibly supportive to me. And so I made this album, 100 Miles, and I made it in 4 months. I had to write, do all this stuff, but and maybe that's the good thing about the weather being so crappy, was that I was inside.
Did you record it
And
here in Portugal, Jason?
yeah, well, I recorded in Portugal, New York, London, all these places. But I mean, I sent out tracks. I know how to do this. And it came back. But I did cut a track here with my group, the Lisbon Electric Quartet. We cut it at Rui Veloso's studio, and I got Randy Brecker and his wife Otto Ravati to be the two front people on top. And then
No
I
way.
went from there. And I started building up with other musicians, and writing songs. All experiences with Miles Davis that I had. Meeting Prince, hanging out in Malibu at his house. All these were turned into songs,
Well,
and
hanging out
that's
with
what
Steve Veloso is pretty awesome as well, isn't it? How extraordinary
Rui,
is it?
Ru- Rui,
Like,
Ru-
make
Ru-
your way
Rui
to
was a
him.
great friend. Is Rui. I can't tell you what we really owe him for
Yeah.
real. He befriended us in such a big way. A friend of mine that I met through Dave Matthews Band, Thomas Mancini, his name was, introduced us to Rui. And I had no idea that Rui knew all my stuff, but Rui's a very astute cat. He knows all the musicians and everything. He's really a big fan. And we got to hang with him. And he really befriended us at a moment that we really, really needed a friend here in Portugal. And
Fantastic.
he was wonderful, man. He's an amazing. First of all, when I saw him perform, I was like, this guy's like the real deal. I mean, he's
Yeah.
for real. It's not like,
Well,
yeah, it's a big star in Portugal. No, he's like freaking really good.
yeah.
And
I mean, he's the father of Portuguese rock. That's how he's
yes,
known, isn't he? So
absolutely.
anyone
Well,
who
he
doesn't
is.
know him should know him. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
he is. So I mean, when I got my friend to release this album, going through Virgin Records, and we just decided we're going for it. But now people are hearing for it, and all of a sudden I'm going to Paris to do French TV and radio, and
Excellent.
and the thing about France is that Miles' album Tutu sold 100,000 copies in there, and Miles gave me a platinum, a gold album from France, very rare, of a Tutu gold album. It was beautiful. He gave me that, because he said, he kept on telling me, man, you and Marcus, man, Marcus and you, man, you guys brought me back, man. And I was like,
How
hey,
beautiful. How
you
beautiful.
bring yourself back, man. And then the shows that I do were basically based off of my book, The Extraordinary Journey of Jason Miles. So I tell different stories of my experiences with it, and I sell books, and of course, I try to sell books. Got to make some dough. Um, and I sell books, and I play just some small place. I'm playing at the Kashkai Jazz Club, and I'm playing at the Casol, which is like down in near Santos, around there. But I would be not telling the truth if I would not say that I've written to like different places and different people here in Portugal, different promoters, and they never write back to me. They never answer my emails or anything.
It's a different scene, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
I think there's something that can be done and that we must do to bring you to a bigger audience here in Portugal for sure. So let's talk about that. But people can
Well,
come and see you. You are booked for some shows, and you're talking
yes,
about your
the
experiences.
29th of May, the 29th I'll be at Casol. It holds like 40 people, but it's a really cool performance space. And then on June 6th, I'll be at the Kashkai's Jazz Club. And people said that lady Maria, man, when I wrote to her about playing this, she got back to me in like just 2 hours, my first week.
Well,
She
people,
got right
yeah,
back to me. And so I feel like really, I feel really like a little bit of vibe towards her, man, because she's been so
yeah.
cool to
Well,
me.
there are others. Shout out
You,
to her for sure. And I
you,
know of musicians in Porto as well who I'm sure will be delighted to host you up
I
there.
love Porto, I
Yeah,
mean, we
yeah.
love Porto. And then there's a guy who has this place called Nice's Lounge, and he opened up over here, but no, it's very cool. He's a good guy. His name is Ashante. And now he's moved into Lisbon in a bigger spot. And I'm going to bring the band there in July, on July 19th, and we're
Fantastic.
going to go and do it with a trumpet player. And on the two shows that I'm doing on the 29th and the 6th is about Miles. It's to celebrate his birthday. And that's what
Wonderful.
I'm going to do. They're going to be inside stories about him that nobody's ever heard before. Because I mean, how many people, how many
Who would?
people can say that, how many people can say that Miles Davis gave him your house in Malibu for the day to hang with your wife while you were there?
Not many people could say that, Jason. It has been an absolute delight and so fascinating to chat with you and to
Thank you.
mention some of the
You
names
got
that
back
are so
so
dear to
fast,
me. Oh, I had to. I had
well,
to.
thank you.
And I hope we'll talk again. And I look forward
Anytime,
to meeting
really.
speaking with you in real life. And I wish
Where,
you all the best with the
where
book.
are
And
you located?
I'm on the Silver Coast. I'd love to.
Oh, the
The beach
Silver
behind.
Coast. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
beach behind me is San Martino de Porto. So we need to get you
Okay.
on maybe at the Prohibition over here as well, where they love
Uh,
music and love to hear
is
Jason.
that near Edacera?
Yeah, a bit further north, but yeah, we're on the same coast. Another.
Nazare?
Yes, I am just 10 kilometers south of Nazaré.
We love Nazare, man.
Well, we need to meet up. We need to, and I'd love to sit with you for an afternoon and hear more of these stories.
Yeah.
Jason, thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
man.
I'd
Very
love to
nice
catch
talking
you
to
as
you.
well.
I will.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Take care.